Thanks so much, and thanks for everything that you do every day. I've spent a lot of time on both borders, and so I want to kind of get right to it. Number one, I have to stick up for my friends at Air and Marine. You know, they are short pilots, they are short-staffed, and they have the same, I think the pilots would give you the same argument that you're giving us about people up here don't understand, and they want to be in the mission. It's clear to me they want to be in the mission, and the guys who are flying are trying to assert the kind of inputs that they think they need. So I just had to kind of stick up a little bit for the Air and Marine guys. Northern border. We passed last Congress a northern border bill that says you have to tell us the threat and you have to tell us what we're going to do about it. I want you guys to inject yourself in that process. I want to see that threat assessment and that plan reflect the ideas that you have. We have huge staffing problems on the northern border. Let me tell you a couple stories. We have a Border Patrol agent who lives 50 miles from Portal. They make him drive his private car 50 miles to Portal to pick up his Border Patrol car to patrol the border and go 100 miles so he can drive back to Portal to pick up his personal car, because they changed the policy on whether you could take the car home. Now, that's something that is ridiculous, but it affects morale. And let me tell you about Customs and Border Protection. I've done a lot of discussing and talking, especially on the northern border. We have a gentleman up there who has worked for, in Portal, who has worked for Customs and Border Protection for 30 years. He has a family in Kentucky or Tennessee, one of those states. He wants to go home. He wants to do just a quick transfer and go home. They won't let him go home, and they work him 16 hours a day. And he's in the mission, and he's not giving up, and he's kind of a grandfather to a lot of the new guys coming on. And I think that's one of the reasons why they won't let him go, because he's a mentor to the new agents and keeps morale up. But why would we abuse this person who's given so much to our country and so much to border protection? Those stories need to be told, and they need to be told clearly. We have a bill called Flexible Hire, which would get beyond the OPM, kind of nonsense that goes there, and says if you have a need, we've got to give the ability to hire directly to the agencies, and we've got to speed up this process. Hope you guys will take a look at that. I hope your unions will take a look at that and weigh in. Senator Langford is absolutely correct. We're on this. We're concerned that you have somebody who came out of the military, veteran who wants to serve, continue in the country. Guess what? We make them retake a polygraph, and even though they have the most highest clearance, they don't pass the polygraph. That is crazy. It's insane. We've got to get beyond these problems. And so we also have an opportunity, regardless of what you think has happened politically, to hit the reset button, right? To rethink how we're going to do this and what we view to be situational awareness in this country on the border. We can't hit that reset button unless we do some of the things that you've heard here, which is talking to employers and doing some white-collar investigations, which should help quite a bit, doing something in terms of verifying citizenship when people are being hired, making that easier, and then obviously, figuring out a plan to deal with the overstaying of visas. I think, Mr. Crane, you clearly made that point in terms of 9/11 and what we need to do to have interior enforcement. But with all of that said, we need to get politics out of border protection. And we need to start talking about what works and what doesn't work. And I can tell you, I have spent a lot of time on the southern border. Building a wall, a concrete wall across the southern border will not enhance border security. Well fencing and walls help. My biggest concern is what's happening at the port of entry. When you have a lineup like that, what are you missing? Because most of you guys would say most of the really horrible drugs, whether it's fentanyl, whether it's heroin, coming across that border are going to come in the ports of entry. I also know that we have a lot of people walking across the border and jumping over, Normandy fences. That isn't particularly helpful either. And so I want you guys to commit to us that you are going to, once again, and we can help you with this, be involved in that reset button. Be involved in the northern border strategy, be involved in the southern border strategy, and think about the ports of entry. And Mr. Reardon, I think you want to comment.
I do. And Thank you very much, Senator. And NTEU is very interested in playing a role in that process. I will tell you that, number one, I've been very appreciative of you in terms of the pay flexibilities that you've talked about, and I've testified in front of you before about things that have gone on in the Bakken region. And I think we need to pay attention to some of the opportunities that we have for the utilization of pay flexibilities right now to take care of some of these situations that we have where people don't want to go to work at San Ysidro. It's very difficult to get people to want to go down there and deal with what you see every day on that picture. I think to be able to use recruitment awards and those kinds of things are important. But I also think that we need to make sure that we're paying attention to the hiring process. I don't remember who, somebody mentioned about the length of time that it takes to bring somebody on board. The numbers that I've heard, and they vary, but I'll give you the range that I've heard, that at CBP, it takes anywhere from 105 to 150 applicants to generate one new employee. That, to me, is just incredible. I've gotten the stories, I've heard the horror stories, candidly, from folks who have taken the polygraph. And they've been sitting in a polygraph for 8 hours in some cases. The fact that 65%, and we've heard that number earlier, are failing when kind of the expected failure rate is somewhere in the 25 to 30% range is outlandish. So I think we do need to fix that. In terms of also related to hiring, I've heard horror stories where an individual has to go to an interview in one location, and then several weeks later or a month later, they've got to go somewhere else in a different part of the country. They've got to pay for that. It takes 8, and that makes it very difficult for people. And they say, I don't need this, and they go to work somewhere else at their local sheriff or wherever. The fact that it takes, in some cases, 16 to 18 months to bring somebody on a new hire on board. How many people in this country can afford to sit around for 16 to 18 months before they can be brought on board? So the hiring process has to be looked at very carefully as well. So thank you very much.
May I jump in? You touched on something that's very interesting. You talked about vehicle assignments and how you have to drive so far to get to. This is something that I have been pressing on the agency for forever. We could save millions of dollars if we would actually use industry best practices, which is have the agents deploy to the field directly from their homes instead of showing up to a Border Patrol station where we pay millions of dollars that we actually don't use other than just to show up there. We could actually deploy, and it would actually save time. We would get more time on task of our agents if they self-deployed straight from their home, just like any DPS officer, just like any sheriff's officer, just like any police force. Industry best practices have shown, but the Border Patrol seems to be behind the curve because we always say we've never done it that way, so we're just not going to.
Well, and this all, they may seem like small things, but they're huge things to the personnel. And so stay engaged at a very high level, and we'll help you do that.
Ma'am, could I comment on this vehicle thing? I want to throw this in there. So, and it's a whistleblower thing, I think. At ICE, we've kind of done a complete opposite thing. They've taken our vehicles. Congress gave us money to buy undercover vehicles, basically unmarked vehicles, to do our law enforcement mission out in the field. Managers have taken the majority of those vehicles and their personal take-home rides at taxpayer expense. They have no mission need to take them. They don't respond to things, while our officers then don't have enough vehicles out in the field to perform the mission. And we literally have people in, you know how big a 13-passenger detention van is, a great big marked. They're out there trying to do undercover work in 13-passenger detention vans with ringers on them when they go in reverse, right? And so at 5 in the morning when you went too far down in one way and you need to back up, every window is opening up going, hey, there's ICE, because our managers have taken all of our vehicles. So, and it's been reported to OIG and OSC, and it's been in the media, and they just continue to do it because they can.